So the three by-elections we've got coming up: Uxbridge and South Ruislip. That's Boris Johnson's constituency. His majority is just over 7,000 votes. You've got Mid Bedfordshire. That's Tories. She's sitting pretty
Hang on, let's go a bit slower, I think.
Yeah, I'm just giving the top line, and then we'll get into it. Okay. I'm just the summary. This is the summation.
You can carry on then.
Sorry, Ava. 24,000 majority, I think, for Tories. That you would assume is probably going to be the least contestable of all of them, but never say never these days. And then Selby and Ainsty, which is Nigel Adams, again 20,000, and I think that's probably going to be the key bellwether. Let's talk about Boris and Uxbridge first. I've spent quite a lot of time there, as I assume probably most of us have, really, being the Prime Minister's constituency. Mm-hmm. I remember in the 2019 election campaign, the candidate was a guy called Ali Milani, and it was very much the decision from Labour was, young, working class Muslim guy, put him up against the entitled, privileged Boris Johnson, and they were really punchy about thinking they could unseat him in that election. I remember Ali saying to me that the thing, it wasn't an if, it was a when. Basically, the tides of demographic change that were not just happening in Uxbridge, happening all around London, but essentially that a younger, more ethnically diverse electorate was starting to develop in these places. And obviously, the Labour Party selection of him, they were really trying to highlight Boris Johnson's previous remarks about, let's say, Muslims, about, let's say, black people. And in the end, I think they probably slightly underestimated Boris Johnson's personal popularity without having the bounce. Maybe I would vote for a Tory. I don't know. If the Prime Minister was my MP, you'd probably be inclined to vote for them because it's like, yeah, my MP is the fucking PM. So, that's like a little bit of prestige for me there. Without Boris, I think that it's almost as good as a done deal that we're probably seeing that spin to Labour. I don't know if you guys see it differently or have anything you'd like to add on that.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, it's certainly the candidate that they've put in there is very different from Ali. Ali was also a socialist.
Yeah.
Danny Beales is not. Danny Beales is homegrown, and he is a Stormright. And he's already a councillor as well.
Okay.
Boris Johnson, though, was eyeing up Hendon a couple of weeks ago. Do you remember that? He was off down there.
Oh, he was at the Fete.
Yes. Sorry?
The Fete. We don't have them in Scotland. They don't really say it.
I think Fete is probably in the truest French pronunciation with the convex accent over the E. I think it would be Fete.
As a French scholar, I concur.
You do have French in your degree, no?
It was my degree for 1 year of university.
And then bailed hard.
Then I realised I was not particularly interested in France and its history or culture.
Wow.
So I dropped it.
Really?
You're a Philistine.
Why did you get turned away by a French woman?
Yeah.
The whole thing was a bit.
The most incel reaction was
yeah.
Just going to nuke your own career out of bitterness. What were you saying? Sorry, Ava. Tell me more about Danny Beales.
No, I think I'm done with Danny.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that there were a couple of briefs out last night that Labour reckon they can win all 3 seats. Now, I would argue that's not possible because, firstly, the Labour Party is bankrupt. It's still paying out a lot of money for some anti-Semitism cases over the last couple of years, and a lot of money in damages for people whose text messages were leaked and bullied and all sorts. So you might see Keir Starmer scurrying around various business leaders, maybe BAE Systems, might give them a nice donation. Look, I don't know. I'm just hypothesising.
I hear Lockheed Martin are looking pretty swell with cash right now.
Well, it is Pride Month.
But a record sales for the British arms industry, though, I believe 8.7 billion in sales this year. So
yeah, well, all you've got to do really is get inside Shell as well, and that could really grease you up, oil you up. Shut up.
Just innuendo, left, right, and centre.
So I think it'd be very difficult for them to campaign in all 3 constituencies.
Yeah.
So it looks more likely that Selby would be a kind of unofficial quiet pact with the Lib Dems. That's where they would take, because also the attitudes in Selby, Mid Bedfordshire, you can see them voting for Starmer. Selby, not quite.
I kind of disagree, to be honest with you. I think you're right. I think Bedfordshire is that sort of true blue, rural, home counties-esque. It's not, I think, is Bedfordshire one of the home counties? I don't think it is.
No, it's just outside.
It's just outside.
It's in
much, that. It's just outside of that.
It's in the huddle, the blob.
The blob. That screams to me Lib Dem. That's what that says to me. It feels like a Honiton and Tiverton. I get that kind of energy from it. where the Lib Dems can, overturn a ginormous majority. I see Selby as more of the bellwether for the Labour-Tory contest, to be honest with you. That sort of more northerly. Labour are in second place there, and again, it's a punchy majority that they're going to have to overturn anyway. But I think if the Labour Party wants to be able to say that it's an election-winning machine, that it's going to move into power, winning Selby for me is basically the key thing they have to do there.
I would agree with that, because Dorries as well is like the ultimate protest vote that you'd turn out for, wouldn't you? You'd go, we're coming in to oust the Tory, heritage. We're getting rid of Nadine Dorries.
It's a poison chalice to inherit if you're the candidate standing to replace Nadine Dorries as a Tory. You have to do a lot of work to be like, I'm not like Nadine Dorries.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily know if that's a bad electoral strategy if a fucking majority was 24,000 votes.
Yeah, maybe.
Being the Nadine Dorries continuity candidate might actually not be a bad shout.
I'm Nadine Dorries Mark II.
Yeah. What Tory would you bring into that constituency? Who would do well?
Well, I guess that provokes an immediate question for me, which is like, what is a Sunak Tory? If we're sort of, if you're thinking, okay, you were just saying, the way you were talking about these by-elections, you were talking about they feel like they might go for a Starmer type person. I can't remember which one you were talking about. It might have been Bedfordshire.
Yeah, mid-Bedfordshire.
Yeah, if I don't know what the corollary of that is to say a Sunak type Tory. I don't know what that is. Sort of authoritarian, pro-inflation, pro-talking about migrants and demonising them, but not actually doing anything to improve their lives.
Charles Walker.
He's not retiring.
He's talking to me through the ether.
He's back. I think that is really interesting, though. I think that's the Conservative membership at large love Boris in a way that they don't Rishi. I think there's a lot of Johnsonians in spirit almost. They loved the majority that Boris won, and I don't think there isn't that general affection for Rishi within the membership.
Yeah, it's crazy that I think if you were to talk to an actual sensible, screwed-on Tory, I think they'd really struggle to make the case to say anything other than that post Boris Johnson, post Liz Truss, they now kind of have an adult back in the room, someone who's a fairly serious operator. Disagree with the politics of them all you like, but I think you'd struggle to say that Rishi Sunak isn't, doesn't take what he's doing seriously, thinks his heart is in the right place for him. He what he believes are the country's priorities, he's pursuing them and trying to be competent about it. And I've completely lost my trail of thought. What were you saying?
That the membership don't love.
Yes,
Rishi.
and regardless of that, there is still this huge strain of thought within the Tory membership that Rishi Sunak betrayed Boris Johnson, that Boris Johnson is the Messiah, and that Rishi let them all down basically by deposing him. And if you lay the politics to the side, I think it's just objectively mental to suggest that Rishi Sunak isn't like a more competent or serious prime minister than Boris Johnson or indeed Liz Truss.
Doesn't have the gift of the gab, I suppose, though.
No, I think you'd really struggle to say that about Rishi Sunak, to be quite honest with you.
What I think is quite interesting is the Conservative Party's affection for Boris Johnson, given I think he holds them in quite a lot of contempt.
What, the members?
Yeah, I think he would have attached himself to any vehicle that led him to power. I think there is a universe in which Boris Johnson was a Labour Prime Minister. He could have, because it's not to do with his politics doesn't inspire loyalty or generation. It's his personality, and I think he would have changed his entire politics if the Labour vehicle was how he ascended to power.
Gordon Brown, I reckon, would have killed him. Can you imagine?
How? What do you think the method of death would have been?
Can you imagine?
Taken him out the back and just strangled him.
I reckon he'd
brained him with a
stuff
telephone.
That, when Boris Johnson said that he earned chicken feed at the Telegraph?
Yeah.
I reckon he would stuff that money down Boris Johnson's throat.
And
that's what I think would happen.
Kill him with it.
And then like a big bellow, he'd use him like this, yeah? To do quantitative easing on the market with the money back out. That's what he'd do.
That's interesting that you talk about that, because Nigel Farage is on manoeuvres suggesting that he and Boris might enter into an alliance and either start a party or probably, I assume, just join Reform to launch.
Boris Johnson in Reform.
No, I mean, I'm To be clear, this is what Nigel Farage is saying. It's not what I'm saying.
What about the Alba party?
They've got vacancies. I
I
think.
did it for Europe. I'll do it for you.
Boris Johnson is now the head of the Scottish independence campaign.
Yeah, the first thing is like the tour of like the SNP cellar where they've put all those contracts, I guess, that they've just all been done for.
I just don't see Boris Johnson doing anything other that tarnishes his brand. He knows that joining Reform or whatever, he's not going to win an election.
Yeah.
And he's just not prepared. The entire thing with him, his entire image within the Tory party and within Britain is of a winner, right? Winning the mayoralty of London, which is a Labour city, allegedly. Winning the Brexit referendum, winning the 2019 election manifesto. And if he goes and joins, let's say it is Reform, he's not going to. He's almost certainly not going to win a seat, let alone win an election, and it just destroys it. I mean, it's dead before it even gets off the ground.
Yeah, that's why he's so upset at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because with him, it's never been about the gravitas of the position. It's always been about making people like him. He's got something very strange about him. He always has to win over the room, win over the constituency, win over the country. That's his progression. And do you know what actually really pissed me off? Right? Did you see that next week, you know how it's going to go to a vote in the Commons about Boris Johnson, about, you know, everything, the Privileges Committee?
Yeah.
In that vote, Labour were allegedly also were thinking about putting a motion. Fuck. Labour were thinking about adding a motion that would be to ban Boris Johnson from the parliamentary estate altogether, so he could never stand to be an MP ever again. Now, why are Labour getting involved in all of this?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like all Labour have done is reneged on their energy policy. They haven't put down anything else.
Is that Rachel Reeves bit off in Washington rowing back on that 28 billion for the green economy?
Yeah.
Yeah, punchy. I think there's something going on in the shadow cabinet between Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband. I don't know what it is, but it would appear he's been slapped down there.
He's so stupid to do that.
Yeah.
Ed Miliband is a force, and people he's a recognised
Ed
effect.
Miliband is a force of nature.
Yeah.
He is like a hurricane, a tsunami, a
why
political earthquake.
Former Prime Minister.
Which is
Ed
why he was
Miliband.
defeated in 2015 by David Cameron.
Yeah, but he worked for Gordon Brown, guys. He worked for Gordon Brown.
Yeah, that is going on there. I mean, I think that's probably a topic for a conversation of the day. I think there's more there.
Polite way of Ollie saying, "Shut the fuck up."
No,
that
not
was
at all.
really boring.
No, it's not boring at all.
Listeners, if you want to know more
Head to my
about what
Twitter
I
account.
had to say, email ollie.joe.co.uk.
And his number is.
Yeah.
I wanted to share a quick word as well. Whilst this, the insanity of this Tory party open warfare, where a former Prime Minister has essentially triggered 3 by-elections, which will be deeply damaging for the Conservative government. Meanwhile, over on Matt Hancock's TikTok account, he is ranking his 5 favourite drinks, and there's some good sound bites which I think maybe we'll drop in right
what
about
was number
now.
1? Because I saw Guinness was 2.
Yeah, it had to be
What was
WK. It was
Salt and
WKD.
He put that as number 1.
He didn't want to put it as number 1. He wanted Guinness to be number 1, and it was like the quote from him was like, "I do love Guinness."
I'm going to rank 5 drinks in order of preference without knowing what comes next. First, Guinness. I love Guinness. But can I go straight in at number 1 without knowing what else is coming next? I'll give it number 2 because I'm an optimist and I hope there's something even better coming up. Oh no! WKD. That is definitely 5 and it's definitely not 1. Can I shift them all up and put WKD right at the bottom?
It's a good soundbite. We'll have it on a soundboard. It's going to appear in the episode.
You know who's
People
going to
will be
drink
hearing
WKD?
it. Who?
Your friend Roche.
Oh,
Comes
yes.
on the podcast.
Wait.
That's what she's requested.
Oh, really?
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
She's going to be on the WKD Blue, the Blue Wickets.
Yes.
Very,
Let's have
very
10.
good.
Yeah.
Will you drink a Blue WKD whilst Roche is here?
Yeah.
No, I was keen.
I like blue kids.
Right. Do you fancy her or something?
No.
This is devolving into school.
You fancy it?
No, you fancy it.